Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. I got home late, sometime after 10, dragging my feet through the door with the stink of hospital soap still clinging to my hands. I'd been at the VA clinic all day. My dad was recovering there after the stroke, still sharp in the head, but his body wasn't cooperating. I was exhausted, but I remember exactly how the living room looked when I walked in. My daughter was curled up on the couch, buried under a throw blanket, even though the AC wasn't that high. She didn't move when I came in, didn't even look up, just sat there, pale and small, like she was trying to disappear into the cushions. Hey, you still up? I asked, dropping my bag. She blinked slow, like it took effort. Yeah. Her voice was flat. No kid energy, no attitude, nothing. That alone set off alarms in my head. I walked over, sat on the armrest beside her. I brushed her hair back gently. You eat? She shrugged. You okay, kiddo? I tried to keep it light. What, someone make you watch the news or eat a vegetable? Nothing. She gave this tight half smile, but her eyes didn't move. I cracked a couple dumb jokes, nudged her, asked about school, friends, anything. But she stayed quiet, weirdly calm, too calm. By midnight, I was in bed, halfway to sleep when I felt her tiny hand on my arm. I flinched. She was shaking, standing there in the dark like a ghost. I sat up fast. She leaned in close and whispered, "Don't tell them I told you." Her voice was tiny, cracked around the edges. I sat all the way up. "Tell me what, baby?" Her lip trembled. "He locked me in the root cellar. With the gun." "What?" "He had a rifle," she said. Pointed it near me, not at me, but close. Said I was being a brat and needed to shut up. He shoved me in there in just my t-shirt. Locked the door. My heart dropped straight through the mattress. "Who?" She looked over her shoulder, like someone might be listening. "Ricky. After dinner." Aunt Trish didn't say anything. She just laughed. I tried to pull her into me, but she flinched. Not from me, just the memory. "I heard her talking later," she added. "She called Grandpa a broken-down old fool. Said she only stayed around for the checks." I stared at her, numb. "Are you sure?" She nodded hard. "Don't tell them I told you." Please, I held her all night. My eyes didn't close once. Something had changed in her, and whatever it was, it started in that cellar. She finally fell asleep around 4 in the morning, curled into my side like she used to when she was little. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I just stared at the ceiling, feeling my pulse in my teeth. My brain wouldn't shut up. All night I kept seeing her face, how calm she'd looked at first. That creepy kind of calm that only comes after a kid shuts something off inside. And the longer I stared into the dark, the more memories came crawling out. See? My mom died when I was 9. Stroke in her sleep. Dad was crushed. For a while, it was just us. Then Aunt Trish moved in with Ricky. Said she wanted to help out, be there for her brother. At first, it felt like family sticking together, but that faded fast. She started calling Ricky her miracle baby. Said he was destined for great things, always going on about how advanced he was. Meanwhile, I was the one packing my own lunches and making sure Dad took his meds. I'd get grounded for not finishing homework, while Ricky broke 2 windows and laughed about it. She had an excuse for everything he did. "Boys need space." "He's passionate." "He didn't mean it." Always something. I remember one Christmas, I saved up to get Dad a mug that said "World's Strongest Dad." Ricky accidentally smashed it with a baseball the next morning. Trish scolded me for leaving it on the counter. Years passed. They stayed. Rent-free. Dad paid the bills, stocked the fridge, handled repairs, everything. He even gave Trish a credit card for emergencies. Spoiler, it was always maxed out, but somehow nothing ever got paid. And when I had my daughter, when I was working double shifts, no child support, barely holding it together, I asked Trish if she could watch her for a few hours a week. She didn't even hesitate, just said, "We're not a daycare, not a daycare." After my dad kept them fed and housed for 20 years, she couldn't watch her niece for 2 hours. That was when I stopped asking for anything. But I never thought they'd turn on her. My daughter. That was a different kind of line. I sat there, running it all back in my head, and every second made it worse. My cousin hadn't just pulled some prank. He'd used a rifle to scare her and locked her in the goddamn root cellar like some hostage. In her t-shirt, no shoes, no coat. And my aunt had watched. This wasn't just dysfunction anymore. This was dangerous. At some point, the sky outside started to go gray. My body felt like it had been hit by a truck, but I couldn't stop replaying everything. Trisha's fake smile, Ricky's smug little comments, the way they always acted like we owed them something. I went into the kitchen, turned on the coffee machine, and stared out the window while it brewed. I felt something shift in me, like a click behind the ribs. I'd spent years trying to keep the peace, biting my tongue to avoid drama. I'd let it slide when they leached off Dad. I'd let it slide when they ghosted me every time I needed help. But now it was my daughter, and she was 12. That cellar could have been freezing. That rifle could have gone off. That smug little coward could have ruined her forever. I picked up my phone and texted my husband. "We need to talk when you get back. Urgent." Then I went back to the living room, sat beside my sleeping daughter, and watched her breathe like it was the only thing keeping me from breaking something. My husband walked through the door just after 8, still in his jeans from the flight, rolling his suitcase behind him. He looked tired, but the second he saw my face and our daughter still curled up on the couch, his whole mood shifted. "What happened?" I pulled him into the kitchen, told him everything. No buildup, no sugarcoating. Just dropped it all on the table like a pile of shattered glass. His eyes didn't blink the whole time. When I was done, he stood there for a second. Then he said, flat out, "Your dad's not going to believe this unless we show him." He was right. Dad still trusted them, even now. Still thought Trish had his best interest at heart. Thought Ricky was just a little wild, like boys will be boys or whatever that excuse used to mean back in the 80s. But we knew something Dad didn't. He'd set up trail cameras all around the property. Said it was for watching deer, but he liked having an eye on things. Quiet security, motion triggered, time-stamped, reliable. We waited until after lunch. Trish and Ricky usually left around then, errands or town runs or whatever they did when nobody was watching. I texted my aunt just to make sure. "Hey, just checking in. How's Dad doing?" She replied, "Out picking up prescriptions." "All good. Perfect." I grabbed the spare key from the junk drawer, and we loaded into the truck. The drive out was quiet, just wind and tires. I kept checking my phone every few minutes, half expecting some change of plans text, but nothing came. We parked around back so the neighbors wouldn't see. Walking into that house felt like stepping into a sealed jar. Same heavy air, same weird smell of old paper and fried food. Dust clung to everything. The couch sagged like it hadn't been moved in decades. That old lamp in the corner still had the same burnt-out bulb from 2 Christmases ago. Even the gun cabinet sat in its usual spot by the hall closet, locked, but untouched. "Start in the den," I whispered. He had one pointed out the back window. We split up, moving fast. I checked behind the recliner where he used to keep his laptop. Bingo! One SD card tucked under a pile of mail. My husband found 2 more near the back porch, still slotted into their little readers. We pulled the batteries, bagged the cards. "You think there's audio?" he asked, stuffing them into the duffel. "If we're lucky," I said. "If not, video should still show enough." We moved through every room like we were defusing a bomb. Even upstairs, Dad's room, my old bedroom, Ricky's lair of dirty socks and vape cartridges. Nothing had changed, and that was the weirdest part. Like time froze the day I moved out. As we headed out, I looked back one last time. I don't know why. Maybe to make sure it was still real. Or maybe just to remember the way it felt, knowing I'd been stupid enough to ever call that place home. We got in the truck. My husband started the engine. No one said a word until we hit the main road. Then he muttered, "Let's find out what they've been hiding." Back at the house, we didn't even take off our shoes. Just dropped the duffel on the kitchen table, fired up my laptop, and started going through the SD cards one by one. First few hours, nothing. Just grainy footage of birds fluttering past and raccoons waddling through dead leaves, wind-blowing branches, a squirrel knocking over a flower pot. Every file had a timestamp, but I wasn't even sure what day we were looking for. Just some rough idea based on when my daughter started acting different. Then, finally, there it was. Ricky, out back, standing by the woodpile with his rifle laid out across a table like he was some damn sniper. Cleaning it slow, sun high, shirtless, smirking at nothing. My husband leaned in closer. "That's the same gun," I muttered. "The one in the cabinet." And then my daughter walked into frame. Little thing, arms crossed tight, clearly cold even in the video. She said something we couldn't hear at first, but then the audio kicked in, choppy, but enough to catch it. "Can I go inside now?" she asked. He didn't even look at her. Just picked up the rifle, swung it halfway toward her, not aiming, just flashing the barrel in her direction like it was a warning. "Don't test me," he snapped. "You'll come out when I say so." She flinched hard and backed up. You could see her legs shaking. I slammed my fist on the table. "Back it up," my husband said. "Play that again." We did. And again. And again. No matter how many times I watched it, I couldn't believe it. That was my kid. And that was my cousin waving a loaded rifle like it was a toy. Then, 2 minutes later, Aunt Trish stormed out the back door, hair in rollers, loud house shoes. She stomped over to my daughter, grabbed her by the arm, and yanked her out of the frame. "She's such a little manipulator," Trish barked. "Go cool off." The timestamp rolled on as my daughter disappeared toward the cellar door. You could hear the creak of hinges and the sharp slam of something metal. Then, silence. Cold, heavy silence. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and checked the timestamp. It matched exactly with the night she'd come home. Quiet, pale, shivering under a blanket. "This is it," I said. "This is proof." But we kept going. I needed more. We popped in the next card. More animals, more wind. Then, Trish again, this time on the front porch. But she wasn't alone. There was a man with her. Late 40s, maybe older, balding. Familiar face, but I couldn't place him. They weren't talking, just leaning close. Then he reached out and took her hand. A minute later, they kissed. Not just a peck, either. Slow, like it was normal. "That's not a cousin," my husband said. "That's someone she's real damn comfortable with." Then came her voice, clear this time. "He's too dumb to know," she said, laughing. "He thinks I'm still loyal. Let him rot in that wheelchair as long as the checks come." I froze, my jaw literally locked. She said it like a joke, like my dad was some punchline at the end of her scam. My husband looked at me, eyebrows raised. "You hear that?" I didn't answer, just rewound it. Played it again. "He's too dumb to know. He thinks I'm still loyal. Let him rot in that wheelchair as long as the checks come." I slammed the laptop shut. My ears were ringing. The heat that rose in my chest didn't feel like anger. It felt like gasoline on a fire that had already been burning for years. "You think this is enough?" I asked. My husband nodded. "Hell yes, it's enough." I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stood up, grabbed my keys, and said, "Let's go show my dad what his family really thinks of him." The next morning, I drove straight to the rehab center. No makeup, no sleep, just pure adrenaline pushing the gas pedal. My husband stayed home with our daughter. She was still rattled, but she smiled when I kissed her goodbye. That alone nearly cracked me open. Dad's room was at the end of the hall. The place smelled like bleach and microwave soup, same as always. But when I stepped inside, I noticed something different. He looked better. There was more color in his cheeks, and his hands didn't shake as much when he reached for his water. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, baby girl." I sat down, didn't say a word. Just pulled out the laptop and set it on his tray table. I hit play. First the rifle. He leaned forward. Then the cellar. He gripped the arms of his chair. Then the porch, the man, the kiss, the laughing, and finally, the words. "Let him rot in that wheelchair as long as the checks come." He didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stared straight at the screen like he was trying to burn a hole through it. When the last clip ended, I closed the lid and looked at him. He didn't cry. His mouth didn't even twitch. But I saw something shift in his eyes, like a steel door finally slammed shut. "I didn't want to believe it," he said. "Not about Trish." I nodded. I didn't either. He looked down at his hands for a second, then back up. His voice was low, even. "Call the lawyer." That was all he said. Not angry, not broken, just done. Like a man who'd been lied to so long, the truth didn't break him. It cleared the damn fog. I stood up and kissed his forehead. "I'll handle it." He grabbed my wrist before I could leave. "You were right," he said. About them. About everything. I didn't need to hear that. But I let him say it, because maybe he needed to. Outside in the parking lot, I finally let myself breathe. The cold air slapped me in the face, and I welcomed it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Text from my husband. "Everything good?" I replied. "He's ready." They have no idea what's coming. The lawyer showed up at our place that afternoon. Name was Eric, mid-50s, gray suit, no small talk. He brought a leather briefcase and eyes that had clearly seen enough family drama for 10 lifetimes. Dad sat at the head of the dining table, wrapped in his fleece jacket, hands steady on his cane. My husband and I flanked him. The air was thick, no one saying much. We just waited while Eric set up. Once he had his laptop out and the documents spread, he looked straight at Dad. "You want to walk me through what we're dealing with here?" Dad didn't blink. "I want full separation. Every tie cut. The house, the accounts, insurance, medical authority. Everything." Eric raised his eyebrows slightly. "Understood." "What's the basis?" I slid him the flash drive. "It's all on here. Video and audio. Threats against my daughter. Verbal abuse. Fraud. Possibly worse." He plugged it into his laptop without a word, clicked through the files while we sat silent. I could hear the moment the rifle scene started. Just the low buzz of Ricky's voice made my stomach flip. Eric's jaw tightened, but he didn't pause, just kept watching. When he finished, he leaned back and crossed his arms. "That's more than enough. We'll file for emergency protective orders, notify Adult Protective Services, and move to restrict their access. You'll have cause to press charges, both civil and criminal." Dad nodded. "I want Ricky off my land. I want Trish out of everything with my name on it." Eric clicked into a new document. "Do they still have any financial access?" I looked at my husband. He pulled out a printout he'd put together that morning. Neatly highlighted, tabbed, ready. "They've got their names on the joint account, 2 utility bills, and Trish still has POA," he said. "Ricky's listed as a secondary contact on the property insurance too." Eric took it, scanned quick. "We'll revoke everything and get statements filed with the bank by end of day. That POA gets pulled today." He tapped his pen against the table. "I'll prep letters of separation and cease contact notices. You'll want locks changed and someone on site in case they try to come back before the order is filed." "They won't," I said. "They might," my husband countered. "We're not leaving it to chance." Dad leaned forward. His voice was low but solid. "They're done. I want them gone." It was the way he said it. Not angry, not emotional, just final, like he'd already buried them in his head. Eric nodded once. "Then let's get to work." For the next hour, it was a flurry of forms, signatures, copies. Eric moved fast, like he'd done this 100 times. Honestly, he probably had. Before he left, he looked at me and said, "If there's more, I need it sooner than later." "There is," I said. "We're still going through footage." He gave me his card and snapped his briefcase shut. Dad didn't say another word until the door closed behind him. Then he looked up at me and said, "I should have kicked them out years ago." I didn't answer, didn't need to. We were already halfway there. The next morning, we walked into the sheriff's office with a flash drive, a printed log of timestamps, and a folder thick with statements. No hesitation, no delay. They took us straight back, no waiting room. A female deputy sat with my daughter in a separate room while the lead investigator asked us for a summary. I gave it to him straight. The threats, the cellar, the footage, the man, the insult, the timeline, no fluff, just facts. My daughter came out after 40 minutes, quiet but steady. The deputy told me she did well, gave her a lollipop like she was still 6. My daughter took it but didn't smile. They opened the case that day, logged every detail, took our devices, and made copies on site. The investigator told us we had enough to move forward with a criminal report, especially against Ricky. By the next afternoon, he was picked up at work, didn't resist, didn't say much, probably didn't think it was serious, thought he'd walk out in an hour like nothing happened. Spoiled little prick. Trish must have found out within minutes because she started blowing up my phone. Texts, missed calls, voicemails. "I didn't know. He's just a kid. We can work this out." Then it flipped. "You ungrateful bitch. Your father will regret this." I blocked her, took screenshots of every message, and emailed them to the detective before deleting her number for good. That night, after I got my daughter to bed and my husband turned in, I sat in the kitchen with the laptop. The lights were off, just the screen glowing blue. I knew I should have gone to sleep, but I couldn't, not until I knew everything. There were still files we hadn't gone through, clips from inside the house, time-stamped in the weeks before Dad's stroke. I clicked through one by one, half dreading what I'd see. Then I found it. A video labeled from the hallway camera, barely angled, mostly shadow, but clear enough. It showed Trish in Dad's room. He was asleep, slouched in his recliner. She moved quietly, didn't turn on the lights. She stood by his nightstand, looked toward the door, then pulled a little sandwich baggie from her pocket. White powder. She crushed something with the butt of her palm, dumped it into a water bottle, swirled it like she was mixing lemonade, then leaned down close and whispered something I couldn't hear. I turned up the volume, just enough to keep him under. She kissed him on the cheek, walked out, and closed the door like she'd done it 100 times. My stomach twisted. I hit pause. My hands were clenched so tight my knuckles cracked. This wasn't just manipulation or money grabbing or a toxic family mess. She was drugging him on purpose. And based on his symptoms back then, confusion, weakness, slurred words, she'd probably been doing it for weeks before the stroke. I copied the file to a separate folder, then picked up my phone and texted the detective. "There's more. I need to come in." Then I sat there, in the dark kitchen, watching the cursor blink on the screen. All I could think was, she wasn't waiting for him to die. She was making sure of it. We didn't wait. First thing the next morning, I brought the new clip straight to Dad. No warning, no easing into it. Just opened the laptop in his rehab room, pulled up the file, and hit play. The second he saw Trish in his bedroom, he sat forward. When she poured the crushed powder into his water, his whole body stiffened, and when her whisper came through, just enough to keep him under, his skin went pale like all the blood drained out in one shot. He didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then he turned his head and looked me dead in the eye. She was trying to finish me off slow. His voice didn't shake. It didn't even sound surprised, just hollow, like something inside him finally gave up pretending. "You said you felt sick at home, right?" I asked. He nodded once. "Couldn't keep food down." "Dizzy. Couldn't stay awake more than a few hours." He looked down at his hands. "I thought it was me getting worse." I didn't respond. I just pulled out my phone and called the detective. We were back at the sheriff's office within the hour. I handed over the new file. The lead investigator didn't say much, just watched it all the way through, lips pressed tight, eyes hard. "This changes the scope," he said. "We're upgrading this case: intentional poisoning, financial fraud, and elder abuse." He brought in another officer to take an updated statement from Dad, who gave it to them calmly, every detail he could remember from the last few months. The headaches, the sleepiness, the moments he'd felt like he was slipping away, and Trish just told him to rest more, drink his water, take his vitamins. My husband and I gave follow-up statements too. Every clip, every message, every timeline. They filed for a warrant that night. 4 days later, they had both of them in custody. Ricky got picked up first, outside the auto shop where he worked part-time. Walked out in handcuffs with that same smug face, like he still thought he'd walk away from this. He didn't say a word. Trish went down harder. When they showed up at the house, she tried the performance of her life, crying, begging, screaming about how it was all a misunderstanding. They didn't care. They cuffed her right there in the front yard. She locked eyes with the female officer and shouted, "You're making a mistake!" The officer didn't flinch. "Tell it to your lawyer." Neighbors watched from porches. A couple filmed. I saw the video online that night. Trish red-faced and yelling as they put her in the back of the cruiser. She'd spent 2 decades playing innocent. 1 week of truth crushed it all. Back at home, my daughter finally slept through the night. I stood at her door, just watching her chest rise and fall, and thought, this is what peace looks like. It wasn't quiet. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. That night, my husband came out to the porch where I was sitting. "You did it," he said. "You burned it all down." I didn't smile. I didn't feel like celebrating, but I looked him in the eye and said, "I'm not done." And I meant it. The court process dragged like it always does. Slow, dry, maddening. But we showed up to every hearing, every deposition, every meeting with the DA. We weren't letting this get swept under some family rug. My cousin ended up with probation, a misdemeanor record, and a year of court-ordered therapy. They said he was young enough to reform. I didn't agree, but I didn't argue either. The footage spoke for itself, but the lawyers played it down, said it wasn't a real threat, just poor judgment. Whatever. He still walked out with a record, and that followed him everywhere. Trish wasn't so lucky. She got prison, 3 years minimum. The judge called it a gross betrayal of trust and ongoing criminal behavior. Her sentencing felt cold, like the court couldn't be bothered to pretend there was anything left to explain. Her plan was obvious. She wanted control. Over Dad, his checks, his accounts, his name. Divorce wasn't an option. If she left him, she'd lose access to the benefits and the house. But if he died naturally, she got it all. So she didn't rush it. Just kept him foggy. Weak. out of it, drugged and isolated, right under everyone's nose. She was going to wait him out. And Ricky? He swore he didn't know about the pills, claimed he thought Dad was just old and tired, but he couldn't explain the rifle, couldn't explain the cellar, couldn't explain why a 12-year-old came home shaking, in tears, with scratches on her legs. He tried to look confused in court, tried to act like the victim. But when they rolled that footage and the whole room saw him swing the barrel in her direction, no one believed a word he said. After the sentencing, Dad cut them both off completely. Legal, financial, emotional, changed his accounts, updated his will, sent formal notice to the state that Trish was no longer his medical proxy. He made sure every door they'd once walked through was locked behind them. He moved in with us for a couple months, just until he got steady on his feet. We set up the spare room. He cooked on the weekends, fixed our leaky bathroom sink, watched game shows with my daughter like he hadn't missed a beat. It was strange, having him there every day, but it healed something too. Eventually, he found a place of his own across town, a small rental with no stairs and a front porch just big enough for a chair and a coffee table. He moved in with a smile, didn't look back once. And my daughter? She started laughing again. Not forced, not nervous. Real laughs. Loud ones. She slept through the night more often. Still had moments where she froze up, especially around loud noises or strangers, but she was coming back. We got her into therapy, a woman who specialized in trauma. That helped. But what helped more was knowing she was safe. No more Trish, no more Ricky, no more pretending everything was just complicated. She knew the truth now, and she saw what happened when we finally stood up. Dad started coming by every Saturday morning like clockwork, always with a dozen donuts, half chocolate glaze, half old-fashioned, just how my daughter likes them. He'd sit at the kitchen table with her while she picked the sprinkles off one by one and told him little things about school, TV shows, books she was reading. Then he'd fix stuff. Door hinges, loose tiles, leaky faucet, didn't matter. He never asked, just rolled up his sleeves and got to work like it gave him a reason to breathe. One afternoon, we were both out back, pulling weeds near the fence line. He looked over at me, sweat on his brow, and said, "I should have seen it coming. Back then, too. I let them turn on you." I stopped what I was doing. That hit harder than I expected. I didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't. Not then, not for a long time. But I nodded. That was enough. For him, for me. The town knew. Word always spreads in small places. Some folks whispered at the grocery store. Some stopped making eye contact. A few said they were praying for the family, which is polite code for we saw it on Facebook. I didn't care. Not anymore. My daughter started journaling again. Little entries at first, then stories. One night, I found a printed short story left on the kitchen table. It was about a girl trapped in a basement who screamed so loud, someone finally heard her. She didn't use names. She didn't need to. I read it alone in the laundry room. And yeah, I cried. She didn't see. I didn't let her. But that story told me more than anything she'd ever said out loud. She was still in there, still fighting, and she hadn't gone quiet. As for me, I slept easy now. No more checking locks twice. No more walking through the house at night with a bat in my hand just in case. The truth was out. She was safe. And the house my dad built, board by board, paycheck by paycheck, was no longer wrapped in poison. It wouldn't be inherited by snakes. It would go to the girl who told the truth. In the end, they lost everything. And I don't feel bad one damn bit.